Hello, greetings, and salutations. Welcome aboard my podcast. I am Jason with Jay's Paradise Travels. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Today I'm going to be talking about my experience with both the Washington State Cougars and the Idaho Vandals. It's been a little bit of time, a little while since I last combined teams in one podcast. When I say Washington State Cougars and Idaho Vandals, I'm not referring to one game between them two, although they play each other quite a few times, but I'm actually referring to two separate games. Before I get into my experience with this, let me just get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way. First off, if you would like to go on vacation, specifically a cruise, which is my specialty, you can reach out to me in a couple of different ways. One of which is through social media. I have an Instagram and a Facebook account, and they're both the same. Jay's Paradise Travels. That is Jays. There's no apostrophe in there. Make it easier for you. Jay's Paradise Travels. You can look me up, send me a message through social media, or if you prefer, you can reach out to me through email. My email address is j.paradise_travels@gmail.com. Once again, that is paradise_travels@gmail.com. All right. Now that that's out of the way, let me go ahead and talk about my experience. Again, I'm going to be talking about the Washington State Cougars as well as the Idaho Vandals. Now, why am I going to be talking about these two teams? And I'm talking about them because it was two different games that I went on the same day. Washington State Cougars and the Idaho Vandals are not very far from each other. An hour or so, maybe, away from each other, even though they're in two separate states. Washington State is actually closer to the Idaho Vandals than they are to the Washington Huskies. And back then, when I did go to see these two games, I was working with the airlines and I had flying benefits. So for me, it was a lot easier to be able to go see whatever team I wanted to. Now that I don't work with the airlines anymore and I'm on my own, I have to be a little bit more um, conscious of seeing teams in the same area. Well, I mean, I was doing it then too, to a degree. Um, but now I got to be a little bit more deliberate with it to try to make sure that I get as much as I can. But anyways, back then I was able to do that. Now because I was working with the airlines, I was flying standby, and I had the time off that I needed to go there and come back. But obviously I didn't have like a ton of time off. It was just a one. It was really just a 1 day adventure, but it ended up becoming kind of a little bit more. Um, this is what I did. The games were on Saturday. Friday, I flew in to Salt Lake City. There was no direct flight from Detroit to Idaho. Not surprising. Um, but there was going to be flights through Salt Lake City. And I flew into Salt Lake. Now, Detroit to Salt Lake can be kind of full too. They're both hubs. Salt Lake has a lot of full flights when I remember working those flights too. But I was able to get on. And if you've ever flown standby or if you've ever worked for the airline, you know that it can be difficult to try to get on flights sometimes. I was able to get on and get from Detroit to Salt Lake. Yay. But now I got to go from Salt Lake to Idaho. And I will say that I remember coming into Salt Lake, we had some rough turbulence, very rough turbulence. Um, and I was a former flight attendant, and I've had some rough turbulence in my life, and I get it. I'm fine with it. If for any of those that are scared to fly, turbulence, it's I know it feels kind of rough, but it's not that bad. It's just like hitting um, potholes on the road. They're inconvenient and they can even kind of jolt you around a little bit, but it's nothing really to be worried about. Well, this was kind of the one of the roughest that I've ever experienced before, and e- and I was even myself. I was thinking, are we going to be okay? And I remember they were going to try to have to come in, but then they had to abort that landing and try to fly back around. Um, and I was like, all right, this that was my first time ever being somewhat a little nervous on a plane. I have flown so many times, never have been nervous, and that was my one time feeling like a little uneasy, like, am I gonna make this? Am I gonna make it? I still had confidence that everything was gonna be okay. Um, and there was so I was on an aisle. There was an empty middle seat, and then there was a young lady that was at the window, and she was scared of flying, petrified of flying. And when we started hitting that, she was getting a little hysterical. So I kind of just reached out and held her hand a little bit, just be like, "It's okay, everything's gonna be okay." Even though deep down I'm thinking to myself, "I hope we're gonna be okay. This is a little rougher than I've. This is one of the roughest flights I've ever been on." And anyway, so I just kind of just held her hand just to make sure she was okay. And and for any of you that are thinking, why is a married man holding another woman's hand? I did tell my wife about it afterwards. She understood. It was not in like any romantic setting, but just in a comforting setting. Um, anyway, so but anyways, we landed and everything was okay. She was okay. We were all okay. Great. All right. Getting into Salt Lake, there's one flight over there. Now, where I was flying to was Lewiston, Idaho. Have you ever heard of that? I hadn't. But when I looked up airports that were the closest to where I wanted to go, that was what I found, one of them. I was like, all right. And Delta did fly there. For any of you that are wondering, the airport code is LWS, Lewiston, for Lewiston, Idaho. I had never heard of it, never seen it, never even paid attention to that area. But here I am going to fly to Lewiston, Idaho. Well, unfortunately, I did not get on the plane. It was full flight. They only had so many seats. I did not get on it. I was bummed. That was the last flight of the night too. So I had to stay in the airport, and there was going to be another flight the next morning that was leaving right away, and it did have availability on it. Um, I'm like, all right, that's only X amount of hours away. And to me, when it's like that tight, you're already in late one night and then it's leaving the next morning. I mean, you could go out and spend the money for hotel and cab and all that stuff, and to be able to maybe get a few hours of sleep, or you can stay in the airport and just kind of deal with being in the airport. And so that's what I did. It was very uncomfortable. I tried sitting in a seat, couldn't quite get comfortable. It wasn't anywhere really to lay your head down or anything like that. I walked around a little bit. I found like a little flat area that I laid down on. I think I had like a jacket I kind of put over me as like a blanket. And then my carry-on bag, which was a duffel bag, I used that as a pillow. One of the most uncomfortable nights. Spending an overnight in an airport is not fun, not comfortable at all. But I had to do it. Anyway, the following morning came along, and I go to get on the plane. As I said, I was able to get on. Small little plane. It's not going to be a big plane going into Lewiston. Um, Small little plane, but I'm able to get on. I get there, and I had to say that was one of the smallest, tiniest airports I think I'd ever been into in my life. It was like, this is so cute. I just want to pinch its little cheeks. It was just this cute little airport. The bags come in. It's this tiny little room. It was so adorable to me, anyway. Anyways, I don't even think I didn't check a bag. I had to carry on, but I saw where the bags were coming out. And from there, I rented a car. They did have a car rental right there. Uh, Rented the car. I had my carry on with me. Put that in the car. It seemed to be a nice, pleasant day. I was happy to be there. That it worked out that I got there. Um, and so from there, I went over to Idaho, University of Idaho, to catch the first game. That was going to be the noon game. And I drove there. And uh, after the Idaho game, again, where I was at, it wasn't too far, maybe 45 minutes an hour, something like that. Got there early enough, plenty of time. After the Idaho game, from there, I went over to where the Washington State game was. Again, it's not that far of a distance. Um, so I had plenty of time to get there on time. And when I went to Idaho, the weather was nice, everything was fine. It wasn't like some bright sunny day. I think there was maybe some clouds in the sky, but it wasn't that bad. Um, or was it? Yeah, it might have been a little bit on the gloomier side, but it still was okay. But by the time I went to Washington State. Well, now the rain comes, and I should have remembered Washington is a rainy state. Seattle, Washington, everyone kind of knows it's kind of always raining there. So I should have remembered that Washington, the state of Washington, was a rainy state. And I did have a poncho with me, and so at least I was prepared in that sense. But with the rain, it was colder and more miserable. And where I parked, I had to kind of like walk up a hill almost to get to the stadium. And it was early enough where, again, they're not that far apart. And it was early enough where I had a little bit of time to kill. I ended up going into like this, I don't know what it's called. I want to say there was a restaurant in there, place to eat, place to sit, use the bathroom, dry off, all that stuff. Um, and it's I guess you could say it's kind of connected to the stadium, um, or it's not, and it just looks out into the stadium. I'm not quite sure, but anyways, I sat down. I had all these windows in front of me, and I was able to look out onto the stadium, which was kind of cool to be able to do. Um, and from there, I think I got something to eat and sitting there again, just kind of keeping warm and dry. And there was a couple there that I got to talking with, and they were very nice. Go to my hobby, what I was doing, and they were nice enough to give me a scarf. It was a scarf that on one side was all Washington State, and on the other side was all Washington. And I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. Uh, I've never seen a scarf with a team on it before, let alone two teams. Kind of reversible. So I wore it. They gave it to me. I put it on. I wore it when I went to the game. And I kept it. I still have it to this day. If I ever go to a Washington game, I'll take it with me and wear it, and I'll just flip it and use the Washington side. Unless it's like super hot out, then I probably won't need to wear it. But we'll see what happens with that. Anyways, got to go to the game, and then after the game, finally got back in the car, took the poncho off, and it's just soaking wet. Got to get dry, put the heat on, head back to the airport, and from there, drop off the car, get on the flight, go back to Salt Lake, and as I mentioned, so I got now back to Salt Lake this time, first try, but going to Detroit didn't happen. Nah, you gotta be kidding me. Can't make it back to Detroit, and all the flights were book, 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 book. Oh, great, this is gonna be fun. I ended up, instead of waiting all day trying to get on all the other Detroit flights, I ended up taking a flight down to Vegas from Salt Lake, get off there, and go from Vegas to Detroit. And even then, I barely got on. There was something, a little issue, like they thought I didn't check in or whatever. I'm like, I did check in. I was on my phone. I checked in. So they were even giving me a little pushback. I almost didn't make it on that flight. I'm like, I just want to go home at this point. But thankfully, everything, they worked it out. I was able to get home. So that was my entire experience with it. Um, got to see two games in one day. And as I mentioned, um, when I started this podcast, I was combining trips or teams or whatever, and then I just decided I'm going to do things individually. The reason I'm going back to this for today, for a couple reasons. One, I don't. One of the reasons, and this might be a silly reason, but I like to try to wear something of the team that I'm talking about now. That's kind of my goal. I found this little vest thing, whatever this is called. Um, Ironically, in Jacksonville, Florida, of all places, the complete opposite corner of where Washington State is. Washington State's up in the northwest, and Jacksonville's down in the southeast. Go figure. But I found it when I was looking for a Jacksonville Jaguars shirt. I was like, well, eventually I'm going to do a podcast on Washington State. Let me get it. Even though it's not a t-shirt, it's a vest. My friend, I have a friend named Marcus. He likes to wear these type of vests, and he'll have Michigan on it. And I did see a Michigan one recently down in Kentucky about a weekend ago when I went down there to catch a couple games. Went to Goodwill. I saw a Michigan vest like this, but I didn't get it. It had like a stain on it. Anyways, so I like to try to wear something. I don't think I'm ever going to come across an Idaho Vandal shirt. I could seek it out like on Amazon or eBay, and I did. I did look at the prices just because I was kind of curious, and it's a little bit more than what I want to spend for wearing it once for a podcast. Um, yeah, because usually I want to spend maybe just a few bucks, go to Goodwill and see what they have. So I don't think I'll ever find a shirt. Now, granted, I could wear maybe just the colors, like a black shirt or a yellow shirt or something to that effect. But I thought that's okay. I'll just combine it. It was on one day, and I'll just combine it. Yeah. Anyway, so let me go ahead and start talking about the games itself. And now I'm going to kind of break it down into two separate things. I'm going to start with Idaho because they were the first team that I saw that day. They were the noon game. As I mentioned, I rented a car from Lewiston, drove out to Idaho, and caught the game out there. The game started with they were playing New Mexico State Aggies, and New Mexico State ended up having a 13-7 lead in the first quarter. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I mean, I'm going to be an Idaho Vandal fan for a day. They're down at the moment, but they could come back. And sure enough, they did. They ended up scoring 20 points in the second quarter, while New Mexico State only kicked the field goal. So they actually took a 27-16 lead going into halftime. After halftime, they continued on. So that second and third quarter, they found their offense. And in the third quarter, they scored not one, not two, but three touchdowns and scored 21 points in the third quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, they basically just exchanged touchdowns. Um, each one of them got an additional 7 points. The final ended up being Idaho 55, New Mexico State 23. They were able to win. Um, Good for Idaho. Nice. As regards their stadium, it's called the Kibby Dome. And I remember seeing it before I went to this game. I remember playing college football on PlayStation and seeing this thing called the Kibby Dome. And it just sounded, I don't know, it looked kind of cute, I guess you could say, kind of funny to me. Not funny in a ha ha, I'm laughing at you type of way, but just in a cute way, I guess. And sure enough, when I got there, I felt the same thing. It kind of it reminds me of a big barn, I guess you could say. It is it's just like a half dome, half white dome, and I've been to other domes before, like Pontiac Silverdome and the Carrier Dome in Syracuse, and uh, I've been to other domes where it's a big building with um, the dome on top of it. I've seen the Metrodome years ago, um, and they had that roof, right? That's, I don't know, whatever the material was. I've seen domes like that. This one was just like a half circle. Looks, like I said, looks like a big barn, and I just got such a kick out of that on the video game and when I saw it in person. And to get there, you're in the middle of nowhere. Lewiston, Idaho, I don't think is around anything big either. So I was probably in the middle of nowhere with that. And then I'm driving through farmland, I think maybe up and down some mountains or hills. This thing is like in the middle of nowhere. And I remember even thinking, how do they recruit guys out here? I mean, they're not a top team that they're going to get the 4 or 5 stars that are going to come through. Um, but still, they got to fill a roster. Are they just looking at people around the air? How do you get people to come to the middle of nowhere? I don't know, but however they do it, they do it, and they were able to field the team. The capacity apparently, according to Google, is 15,250. Okay, I can kind of see that. It's not a huge dome, right? Stadium. Um, the attendance it said was 10,278. Now that one I'm not sure about that. I don't recall seeing a ton of people there, and I pretty much remember. I mean I bought a ticket, um, and yeah I bought a ticket went inside. I'm pretty sure like it was kind of in a way open seating. I don't think there was. I mean, if there was an assigned seat, I may have sat in it, but really it was kind of it was yeah, they could pretty much sit where you wanted to sit. When I looked around at the stadium, I don't recall there being a ton of people there. I don't think there was 10,000. And I remember like just on the sides, like there's walls, right? You see the end zone, goalpost, wall, other side, uh, end zone, goalpost, wall. I got such a kick out of this place, and they got the word Vandals on the wall, um, and on the outside, like I said, a lot of farmland. They had a big, I want to say it's like a big water tower. As I looked around, trying to take pictures of the outside, and their stadium name, and things like that. The Kibby Dome. I got such a kick out, and I always people always ask me like, "What's your favorite stadium?" And I always or experience, and I kind of go back to Penn State and how it was um, the electrifying atmosphere. But just I don't know something about the Kibby Dome. I probably should start mentioning this. Like it's one of my favorites too because it was so cute to me, and I feel like I'm saying that that's not to be oh it's not to be insulting or anything like that. I get a kick out of it. Um, yeah, I enjoy being able to go there. It was in Moscow, Idaho. That's where University of Idaho is at. Moscow, Idaho. If you've ever heard of that, I'm sure you heard of Moscow, Russia, right? But if you've ever heard of Moscow, Idaho, that's where they are. If you're an Idaho fan, you're from Idaho, you know it. But just your average Joe casual football fan, I don't know if you've ever heard of Moscow, Idaho, but that's where they're from. That's where I went from Lewiston to Idaho, or from Lewiston to Moscow. And now just some miscellaneous things about uh, Idaho. Again, they're kind of out there in the middle of nowhere there, and I was wondering how they recruited people. But one of their players, his name was Matt Linehan. He was the son of Scott Linehan, who was an offensive coordinator for the Lions at one point. I think maybe at that time for the Cowboys. I'm not sure where he's at now. This was, many years later. But he actually had like a really good game. He threw for 476 yards and had a total of 5 touchdowns. So a pretty good game for Matt Linehan, their starting quarterback. Um, when I lived in Texas, uh, a bunch of friends that I had, there was a couple, there an older couple, and he was originally from Idaho, and apparently he even went to Idaho, which I never knew. It wasn't until I went to the game and posted pictures, and I think the wife made a comment that that's where he went to school at when he was younger. I was like, oh, okay, so I actually know someone that went to this university, which makes sense. He was kind of like a country guy. Last year, now I'm recording this in 2025, September of 2025. Last year, the University of Idaho, as small of a school as they are, and they're not a top big dog, they went into Oregon, who was a top big dog, who is a top big dog, and actually fought them very hard and played them down to the wire. Oregon did beat them, but not by much. I think they pulled away at the end and only won by 10 points. So Idaho actually had a team that was willing to fight and scrap and give a big dog a challenge. And that same head coach that coached Idaho that year moved over this year to New Mexico, who ended up playing Michigan in their first game, which we worked a couple weeks ago, and they gave Michigan a fight. It wasn't exactly a humongous blowout. Michigan did win, but they had to fight them for it, and it wasn't a huge victory. It was what could have been, I should say, when it's like a bigger team against a smaller team. It was in the 30s to, I don't know, 34-17 or whatever it was. I can't recall the score, but it was something like that. And so that same fighting mentality that they had from Idaho last year, that coach moved to New Mexico, did it. Not New Mexico State, who Idaho played that game. I went New Mexico, the Lobos. Um, and then as regards Idaho themselves, at the time, they were in what was called the Sun Belt Conference, which I don't think is around anymore. Come to think of it, I think no, they are. I'm sorry, the Sun Belt is still around. I feel like these conferences with the smaller ones come and go. The WAC conference was gone. I couldn't remember which one they were in, but they apparently they were in the Sun Belt Conference. Well, now the Sun Belt Conference, which is like one of the smaller conferences amongst the bigger division, FCS, what used to be called uh, NC1A, what used to be called NC, what was it? Two-way? I mean, never mind. Forget I said that. Um, Division One, that's what it, Division One, what used to be Division Two, which is now called FCS. Idaho used to be in the bigger one, FBS, but on the smaller side. Now they've gone back to uh, FCS. Now they're in the Big Sky Conference. And who's in the Big Sky? I don't know. But that's where they are now. I guess maybe financially and just competitiveness, they weren't really keeping on par with that, so they went down. And I'll be honest, before uh, my goal was to see like everyone in the FBS, including the small school like Idaho. I have since changed that, and there's been a few reasons why. One, without working at the airlines, it's a little harder to get to even the smaller schools in the middle of nowhere. Two, there's so many to see, and I only have so much time, money, energy to go around. I'd rather focus on the bigger schools now, and where I used to do the smaller schools, now I don't anymore. Just focus it on the big ones. And three, that was another reason why. What happened? Like I might go to Idaho, spend a weekend worth of traveling, money, time, energy to go out there, go see the game. I enjoyed it, sure. Cross it off my list, and then next thing I know, they're not even in that that division, that conference anymore. Now they've it's not like soccer where there's a relegation type of thing, but I mean there sort of somewhat kind of is with it. And so now they're not even that conference, but they're not even in the FBS anymore than the FCS. And then teams from the FCS who I wasn't going to see, that wasn't on my radar. Now they jump up to the FBS. Now I've seen teams like Missouri State and Kennesaw State and other teams that I didn't see before. And it just all those little ones they move up and down like almost like it is a relegation thing in soccer. It's just like all right, uh, the big ones aren't going anywhere, right? Michigan isn't going to get go down to the MAC schools, or Michigan State isn't going to go over to Conference USA or anything like that. So I'm going to just focus on the big teams and and not the smaller teams. But of the smaller teams, I have done podcasts on them, and I'm talking about them. Maybe that's another reason why I'm combining Washington State too, instead of having a. I have done podcasts for just the small teams. Um, but in this case, I'm just going to do it. And you know what? It's my own podcast. I can do what I want with it. All right. So that was the Idaho Vandals. Let me now switch over to the Washington State game. Um, I got there. As I mentioned, they were kind of like up on a hill a little bit. They're not exactly in farmland territory. Was able to get a couple outshot shots of the building. Um, and obviously a bigger one than the other one. And this was I went and went inside for a little bit, came out, had to put my poncho on. People were already there. I had to walk around the stadium because basically where that is on one side of the end zone, I was on the other side of the other side of the stadium on the other end zone. Um, and the first quarter, it was Washington State kicked a field goal, made it 3-0. That was it. One field goal the entire quarter. Next quarter, they scored a touchdown to make it 10-0, but even that came late in the quarter. So the first half wasn't super exciting. 10-0 Washington State lead going into halftime. Okay, good for the Cougars. Again, I'm going to root for them for one day. UCLA did come out and score a touchdown in the second half in the third quarter, make it 10-7. And I've mentioned many times, I think a 10-0 lead is a very deceiving lead. And there's a good chance that the other team could come back. They didn't though. UCLA scored, but that was it. And then Washington State added two more touchdowns in the third quarter, and they took a 24-7 lead into the fourth. Um, and then in the fourth quarter, UCLA did kind of mount a comeback. They did score a couple of touchdowns, but Washington State did kick another field goal. Even if they hadn't, they still would have had enough to win the game. But they won it 27-21 over the UCLA Bruins. This stadium that they're located in is in Pullman, Washington. So you got Pullman, Washington, and you've got Moscow, Idaho. Those are the two cities, and Lewiston, Idaho. Those are the cities I was in that day. The capacity is 39,952, so just under 40,000. Not a humongous stadium. There was a decent sized press box on one of the sidelines that I walked across. Um, and then on the other end of where I was mentioned, where I was sitting, I was like uh, in the front row uh, in one of the end zone, which was kind of cool. Um, and the attendance was 29,310. I guess I could kind of see that. It did seem like they had a decent amount considering the rain that was going on. I mean, I'm glad I had a poncho. I was getting wet, and then trying to take pictures during it wasn't exactly the easiest thing in the world to do. The stadium is named Martin Stadium. I'm guessing that's after somebody, probably an alumni or someone that went there. I don't know. I didn't look in the history of the name of the stadium, but it's called Martin Stadium, again in Pullman, Washington. That one other end zone that I sat there in the restaurant, I thought that was nice. It was nice inside, nice and dry, nice and warm. Had a lot of food, the bathroom there, and it looked out over the stadium. Now I don't know if during a game people have to have tickets to go in there. I guess I didn't research this, or if you just go in and you could just be in there and see the game. I don't know because it's in full view. Um, Not quite sure, but anyways, that's kind of unique. I won't lie. That's a little bit of a unique thing. Every stadium has something unique to it. The Kibbie Dome is this looks like this big barn, and they have this water tower, and they're kind of unique in just the size of the thing. It's so cute. And then in Washington State, a little bit unique that they've got this building that's connected to it. I think it's connected to it. If it's not connected to it, I mean it's like right with it. Again, you can see it, and it takes up one of the end zones pretty much. Although I want to say that there is still in front of that, there's still some seats. So there's that building, and then there's still some seats. Again, I don't know if they're connected or not, but anyway, so that's on one of the end zones. I sat in on the other side, and behind me there was the scoreboards, which at some point I did walk up there and kind of stand up there where I was sitting. Front row is kind of cool. It's not the you might think being in front row is you're going to have this great view, and you kind of do to a degree. But when certain things are happening in other parts of the field, you sometimes don't always see them, just on the angles. And then I had uh, I had these group of girls that were sitting on my left, college girls, I guess, and they were all right. And I remember briefly conversing with one of them that was sitting next to me, and I just mentioned I was here by myself. My wife was at home. She didn't want to come, whatever. And she says something, that is so sad. I just kind of laughed inside myself, like, okay, sure, why not? It's not that sad, but all right. Didn't really talk to them too much. And then right next to me was a guy. I can't remember if his girl was there too. And he had this little boy. And I mean, I have nothing wrong with kids, but sometimes kids can, depending on what they're doing, what you're saying, can be annoying. And he's just constantly every 5 seconds screaming out, "Go Cougs!" It's just like, all right. And then he's dancing around and kind of acting a little bit of obnoxious and annoying. And I'm getting a little frustrated with him, I won't lie. And his dad's looking at him like, look at my son. Like, jeez. So I was down there for a while. I tolerated it. I did my thing with taking pictures and trying to enjoy the game. But eventually I did go back up uh, to where that scoreboard was, and kind of took in the rest of the game from there. Um, yeah. So some miscellaneous things with Washington State. They do have a cougar as their mascot. They're the Washington State Cougars. I think I got one picture of him riding something. And their logo is kind of interesting. I don't know if you can see this logo. It does look like a cougar, but it's a WSC for Washington State Cougars, and the S and the C form like the Cougars' face and mouth with it open. I think that's kind of like a unique looking logo, kind of like one of those. I don't know, those logos that always have something hidden in it. That's kind of what this is. That you can see what it looks like a cougar with its mouth open, but it's the S and the C that is is forming that. Um, Years ago, Washington State, and one of my first memories of Washington State was around the 97-98 season when Michigan went to the Rose Bowl and played Washington State. They and that was when I prior to that, I hadn't been a humongous college football fan. I liked Michigan because they were the home team for me, and I was always a hometown guy, but I was more diehard into hockey and the other sports. But that year I got into college football because I was following Michigan, and they kept winning and went to the or they won a national championship. They went to the Rose Bowl, and the team they were playing was Washington State. And Washington State actually, I think, came out and scored first and was actually doing pretty well. They had a quarterback named Ryan Leaf who was great in college, got drafted like one or two. I want to say he got drafted number two the following year, but then just didn't do anything um, in the NFL. But anyways, Washington State played Michigan, and the when they played them in the Rose Bowl, me and my parents were in California. Um, we were visiting some family of that my mom knew when she was a kid. Went out to eat with them, and this is the day of the game. And I knew we were going to be driving a few hours, so I'm begging my parents, "Can we go? Can we go? Can we go? I want to go see the game. Can we go? Can we go?" Nope, 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 nope. Okay. Finally, at a certain point, I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'm just going to go up, watch the game, whatever little bar that they had with the TV. I'm going to go watch the game. They can sit and talk. Game's about to start. One game was ending. Michigan Washington State game was about to start. All right, Jason, time to go. Wait, what now? The game's about to start. Oh, well, we'll listen to it in the car. I don't want to listen to it in the car. I want to watch it. Nope, we got to go. We got a few hours to drive. Oh, you're kidding me. So we put it on in the car, listened to the whole thing, got upset when Michigan was losing, got happy when they were winning. We got into the hotel around the last drive. And Washington State had the ball. They had a chance to go down and score to win the game, but time ran out on them. And the way it ran out was kind of funny. Like they spiked the ball, the time ran out, and Washington State thought they had at least a second or two. And next thing you know, like everyone's storming the field, the referees leaving, like, well, I guess that's it. Michigan wins. I'm sure Washington State fans probably maybe still to this day don't care for that. Um, but that was my first memory of the Washington State Cougars. And I mean, that was 90, technically it was 98. It was a 97 season, but January of 98. I don't think they've made it back to the Rose Bowl since then. Not that I can recall, anyways. If they have, but I don't recall them going back to the Rose Bowl since then. Um, and I think they've only been maybe a few times. They were in the back then it was called the Pac-10. They're in the Pac. Then it became the Pac-12 when they added a couple teams. It's still called the Pac-12, even though now it's just down to two teams currently at this moment in 2025. It's just them and Oregon State. Even Washington moved over to the Big Ten. So whatever. I'd have to look at their schedule to see who they play exactly. Probably a hodgepodge of teams, almost like they were independent. Um, I know them and Idaho kind of have like a little bit of rivalry because how close they are in proximity. Um, yeah, so they're still in the Pac-12, so to speak, with two teams, them and Oregon State. Which I looked at I did briefly look at their schedule and kind of get a rundown. They actually play Oregon State twice this year. That's kind of interesting. One at home, and one on the road. That's the first time I've ever seen that in college football. Anyway, that year though that I went, they started off the season. They finished 8-5. I'll say that they started off with two wins, won 8 in a row, including the game I went to against UCLA, and then lost the last two regular season games. Went to a bowl game, lost to Minnesota. So lose 2, win 8, lose 3, finish 8-5. That was what they did that year that I went. Washington State, I don't have anything too much more about them or against them or anything. Michigan did beat them. They gave Michigan a fight in that Rose Bowl, but ultimately Michigan did win. And I remember Charles Woodson's interception against Ryan Leaf in the end zone, that was a pretty incredible catch. Yeah, and then I got to go see them. I do think it's kind of cool. They got usually the word Cougars on the side of their helmet, and like this cursive almost. I think that looks pretty slick. Yeah, but that was my experience with the Washington State Cougars as well as the Idaho Vandals, both of them same day, and I did enjoy it. I always enjoy it. Even, I mean, miserable weather, obnoxious little kid sitting next to me. He's probably a teenager now. I don't know. That was back in 2016. It's like 9 years ago. So yeah, he's definitely at least a teenager right now. Whoever that family was, they may be listening. I doubt it, but they may be listening. Who knows? I hope they're doing well for themselves. I wish ill will on no one, even if they do annoy me for a time. Um, but despite it, I still the rough flight going in, having a sleepover in the airport, uncomfortable, make my way to Vegas just to get home, all that stuff. That was all hectic. But despite that, still had a good time. I still enjoy going to a game. And in that case, two games all in one day. And I did enjoy it. And if it's something you would like to do, if you'd like to go see some teams, Washington State, Idaho, by all means, let me know. Or if you want to go on vacation, specifically a cruise, which is my specialty, again, let me know. There's a couple ways you can reach out to me. You can send me a message through Facebook or Instagram. My handles for both of those accounts are the same. Jay's Paradise Travels. That's Jays. There's no apostrophe. Jay's Paradise Travels. Reach out to me through social media, or you can email me. Shoot me an email at j.paradise.travels@gmail.com. It's jay.paradise.travels@gmail.com. Be more than happy to help. Be more than happy to help you with any of your vacation needs. You, your family, your friends, please uh, share this video with others. Share my contact information with others. I'd love to be your travel agent, your family, your friends' travel agent. Try to make this world a happier place, one vacation at a time. So feel free to share the video, like it, subscribe to the channel, all those good things that podcasters need to keep their podcast going. Drop a comment. Let me know if you have a memory of or an experience with Washington State and or the Idaho Vandals. Whatever it is, good or bad, just please keep it clean if you're a rival fan. Not looking for hate. We're just looking for experiences. It's a travel podcast, not a sports podcast. Love to hear whatever your experience with these teams might be. And again, love to help you out if you need anything. I hope you enjoy this podcast here, combining two teams in one podcast. First time doing it in a while. Hope you liked it. Hope you learned something from it, took something away from it, and I look forward to talking with you guys again another time soon. Take care. Bye bye.